Hello, I'm BX and welcome back to QnA Saturday. QnA Saturday is a weekly series I run on my channel where I answer your questions about a variety of things, mainly focusing on the next big update for Minecraft Xbox and Minecraft PlayStation. Currently we're calling it Title Update 28, and all of these questions about it came from last week's Q&A. So if you want to leave questions for next week's one, please leave them in the comments down below, but also please do like the video if you do like it while you're down there anyway. It helps out the channel a lot and lets me want to see more stuff like this. Anyway, let's get straight into the video then, shall we? With our first question, which comes in from Jack Frost, who asks hashtag QnA. Toycat, do you think the console version and the PC version and the Pocket Edition will be the same after 3 more years? So the simple answer to this question is I don't think 3 years will be the time where they're all the same, because, although it's their end kind of goal to always get the features going across all of them rather than making 3 separate games, I think, 3 years is definitely way too short time, because the thing is they have very different teams working on very different priorities at the same time. So right now, the console version is all about catching up the PC, but whereas the Pocket Edition's like, we can do some fun stuff there, maybe the Ender Dragon fight, and, they're very different priorities they're working on, whereas the PC is just like, let's make some crazy new stuff. So, given they have different priorities, they're always going to be tending towards a closer game, but I think even in 5 or 10 years, we're still going to have the same game. I think in 5 years, we might have cross-platform, but in, I think having, properly interoperable games where the updates came out at the same time and all this sort of stuff, I think that's not a realistic goal for the near future, but I think at some point it will happen, but not very close. So yeah, that's the answer to your question. Hopefully it did help. And let's get into the next question, which comes in from Benjamin MG. So Benjamin MG asks hashtag QnA. When will Xbox 360 and PS3 will have amplified worlds? So the answer to this question is based on my testing. Half the actual running of the amplified world, I have run one on an Xbox 60 and it runs just fine. There's only frame drops when you get really creative stuff, like you have water, you have all the mob cap, you have all that stuff next to you. So I reckon they can run the amplified world, but whether or not they want to put it in there is a different question. The reason they might not want to is because it does increase the load time massively, and when you consider the fact that right now a average world like my Let's Play world takes like close to a minute to save and to load and stuff, you've got to consider like 2, maybe 3 minutes to load up a world. That might not be something people are willing to do. I don't know, you'd have to let me know in the comments of course, but I personally think a lot of people wouldn't like having the 2 to 3 minute wait, so they'd have to really optimize it, or they might just bypass it for a little bit. But I think at some point it's likely, but the next update, I think it's not guaranteed. I'd say it's maybe like one of those like 70-30 type deals. So yeah, that's my opinion on amplified. So moving on to the next question, which comes in from Sultan Al-Shami, and I figured I'd include this one because this is the question I get asked all the time, and that is hashtag QnA. Toycat, when will the next big update come? Also, you don't have to do hashtag QnA. I say this every now and then, but a lot of people think because all the questions have it, they need to do it, and it's one of those self-perpetuating cycles. Anyway, the next big update, when is it coming? So, like I said, we're currently calling it TU28. Right now, I think we know it's not coming in the next month or 2, but I think depending on what sort of schedule they're following, they might go for a big update closer to the end of the year, like go for another big TU19 style update that's multiple updates in one, close to December, or they might be sticking to like a more smaller update cycle and have an update, let's say in October, that has just new biomes or has just all the rest of 1.7. Stuff like that, I think, is an entirely possibility. We don't know which one they're going with. 4J used to be so consistent, but because obviously 1.7 and 1.8 are such massive updates, we've kind of lost track of where the next update's coming, how long it will take, or what's going to be in it. So yeah, it's very exciting times, but also very confusing times. So next big update, either October or like December, January time. But I think more than 6 months is unlikely. I think in the next few months is definitely likely. So anyway, let's move on to the next question, which comes in from Callie Mia, who asks hashtag QnA. Do you think you'll be able to set waypoints like on PC? Because I always get lost. Also, you are amazing. Thank you very much, by the way. But yeah, will you be able to set waypoints like on PC? So I think there's a chance of that. But I figured I'd use this question to actually just kind of give you a bit of like a guide on how to not get lost, because it's something I used to struggle with a lot when I first started playing. Basically, when you first spawn, you do have a map. Pull it out and like make note of like your surroundings there, and try and always spatially think where you are on a map. Like on my Let's Play world, for instance, I know the major parts of the map and I know how to get to them. So even if I had to take like a random like diagonal route to go straight there, I know how to get to the places. And it's harder when you first have a world, but always just try and spatially work out where you are on a map, and then you should have less problems getting lost. So yeah, easy fix for that right now. Waypoints potentially in the future, and yeah, that's that. So anyway, next question comes in from Cameron Cameron Jackson, who asked #QnA, if mods do come to the console, will we be able to install multiple mods at the same time? So mods are perhaps the most requested feature these days I've seen for Minecraft, and unlike the past where it was like this far off feature because, you know, even modding the 360 is tricky and the Xbox One has encrypted saves and stuff, we used to think, okay, that's not going to happen. But we do now have a lot closer to that happening because of the fact you've got to consider the Windows 10 edition of the game is probably going to support mods, and once it does, like with Fallout 4, it's going to be the first Xbox One and really first console game to support proper mods. So yeah, assuming that system works, the same system could work from Minecraft Windows 10 to console, or even from the PC version if they have a lot of conversion. And given that mods are one of the most famous parts of Minecraft, I've got to imagine Microsoft are working as hard as they can to make something like that possible, because it's really on their end to make the console able to take and convert all that sort of stuff. So yeah, mods are going to be coming at some point in the future. And will there be multiple mods at the same time? Almost certainly. As long as you don't, like, there's probably going to be a limit of, let's say, 3, but yeah, multiple mods at the same time is, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the next question, which comes in from Silver Gaming, who asked #QnA, how will dual wielding work on consoles? There's no space for anything left on consoles on the controller to be a hotkey for dual wielding. And this is one, I guess, if you haven't seen the PC snapshot, then it's kind of hard to understand how dual wielding can work. But basically, dual wielding is just an extra slot on the side of your inventory. When you put something in that slot, if it's an arrow for a bow, for instance, you'll fire that. But if it's something like, let's say you have a pickaxe in one hand and an end pole in the other, basically you can only use things that have a right trigger in your main hand, and then if it uses a left trigger button, use it in your other hand. So, for instance, you know, when you're using a pickaxe, you can't left trigger anything. You can't, you know, use it to, like, stuff like placing water bucket stuff, you can't use a pickaxe to do that, whereas an ender pearl can only be used for left and not really right, so that way what you can hit with your pickaxe and then fire end pearls with your left. That's my favourite use of it. I mean, with a sword and ender pearl, you can use it for potions, you can do all that sort of stuff, and yeah, it's a really cool thing, but that you don't need an extra button for dual wielding. It doesn't work like that, as cool as that would be, but yeah, that means you don't have to worry about it fitting on your controller, which is great. So anyway, let's move on to the next question, which comes in from Tyler Miller, who asks #QnA, have you found a pink sheep in the wild? So if you wonder why this is a question, it's because pink sheep are in fact the rarest of the sheep to spawn. I think it's 1 in 600 sheep will spawn as a pink sheep, which is pretty rare, but yeah, I have actually found quite a few pink sheep over my time. It's like, you know, skeleton jockeys. You're like, oh, there's only, you know, 1 in 100 chance, but, you know, over enough time that adds up, and I've seen like tens, if not almost hundreds of skeleton jockeys. So, same thing with the pink sheep. I've seen a few of them. And it's pretty cool that they're rare, but in reality, like, you know, it's easier just to die one, but it's a nice find when you do get one. So yeah, that's the answer to your question. Pink sheep, they're cool, but I have found a couple. So anyway, let's move on to the next question from Quitop, an ultimate gamer, who asks, is there going to be an update switcher like on the PC? You are awesome, I always like your videos, and I do. Thank you very much, by the way. But let's answer the question, which is the update switcher thing. So the reason the PC can have an update switcher is because they have access to every single separate version of the game, and you can just reload it into the game. On the console, that's not quite as easy a thing, because the way they update the game is they just update that title update file, and although they have all the title updates, you know, probably stored somewhere, having the ability to switch them would be really tricky. I'm not sure how that works, the whole Microsoft thing, because the only way to install, title updates is through the external thing. So I imagine if they had to have an update switcher, they'd have to have all the files, like, ready to load into the game at any one time. And even then, there's so many questions you have to answer to do with stuff like, oh, how do we stop people from corrupting their own worlds? How do we stop people, should the PS4 have TU1, even though it wasn't out at that time? Should the PS3 have the first update it was out, or should it have TU1? All these weird questions that you'd have to answer, and I don't think because of all of that they do it, because it's so much effort for something that's just like kind of a nice nostalgia, and you can kind of do it already by either installing the title update customly, or you can just delete yours and go back to TU1, which I've done a few times actually, and as soon as the next updates come out, I might do like back to TU11, because it's still been quite a while since even then. Anyway, that's the answer to that. Let's move on to the next question, which comes in from Termless Fob2375, who asks, when all versions are the same, will 4J not do it and Mojang will? So they're asking, basically, also please come to New Zealand. So I might come to New Zealand at some point. I know it's a lot more expensive than even Australia, because it's like the literal opposite side of the world for me. I mean, I don't think it could be further away if it tried, but I might do it at some point. But anyway, will 4J not do it and Mojang will? So this is a common misconception that people are like, oh, well, 4J are just there until, you know, the versions are catched up, then, Mojang can start updating it instead. However, Mojang don't have much experience with consoles. Console coding is much, much different, and that's why 4J are on board, because they've been doing HD remakes of games for quite a while now, and that's why they were the guys, they're like, oh yeah, do this 360 version. So that's the reasoning behind that. Let's move on to the next question, which comes in from Robert Stur, who asks #QnA, what feature do you think is the most useless in Minecraft? So, I'm sure if you watched all of my videos, you know what my answer is going to be, gravel. But technically speaking, the golden hoe is slightly less useless because you need the gravel block at least once per game, whereas you need golden hoes precisely 0 times ever. But the golden hoe won't bother you if you don't craft it, whereas gravel is everywhere. So I'm going to say gravel's the most useless because you use it once a game and then it annoys you for the rest of eternity, and that's not very good in my opinion. So yeah, that is the end of QnA Saturday. I hope you did enjoy it. If you have any questions that I didn't answer, leave them in the comments down below. Like the video if you did like it, share it if you really liked it, and subscribe if you're new around here. I make videos like this every single day on my channel, and as this video goes up, I'm actually in Scotland. So if you follow me on Twitter, at IBXToyCat, you'll see some probably Scottish photos. So if that's something you want, then maybe do that. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!